I am Nancy K. Brown, and I'm faculty in the College of Social Work. I teach in the Advanced Practice Sequence, and I am director of the Drug and Addictions Certificate Program. And I've been teaching distance education courses since like 1992, 1993. And I've had this opportunity to kind of watch how it has evolved over the years. And the thing was that when I first taught it, we taught a class in human behavior for social work at the University of Albany. And there was actually a director and a studio. And it wasn't like what we have here. We had a set, and I had a co-teacher, and it was kind of like, we felt like it was like the Nancy and Dirk show. And we're like, well, what do you think about that? Well, I think this. And, you know, it was kind of this highly produced super thing that took a director, a producer, and, you know, all this other. They had a lot of money. They had a lot of money. So they were able to kind of do this very elaborate distance ed thing. And then I came here, and then there was a period of time where we did synchronous with the two systems where students were all in one place and students were all in, you know, the telecom thing or whatever you call it. And we did that for a while. And then we came here, we had the satellite, and the satellite looked a lot like the studio where you're just talking. You know, now we have this capacity to use a whole lot of different kinds of technologies that are really, I think, you know, if you can use them all, and I have to tell you frankly that I do not use them all. I use what I need, and, you know, the rest I don't use. And so what works in your class might be very different than what works in my class. So now we have this, we have Blackboard, and we have Adobe Connect, and we have Adobe Presenter. And so we have these three technologies, and on top of that we have chat and Skype and this and that and the other thing. So we have all these different kinds of things that we can use. And what I'm going to do today is show you what I use, okay? And I guess I think that, or they think, that will be something useful to you. And I would be more than happy to answer questions, and I can also answer questions about how you might use this in your class and what suggestions. We also have in the room two instructional designers, one of which I'm married to, and and the other one I like very much. It's Aisha and Mike, Dr. Haynes and Mike Brown, who also are here, and they may be able to answer other questions. So really what I'm going to do is go through what I did. There are two courses that I'm going to show you today. One is a course that we developed, it's been taught twice. It's developed as a distance ed class, and it's called Military Mental Health and the Impact of Trauma. And one of the things that you want to have happen in a course like this, particularly in a distance ed class, is somehow this idea of trauma has to be conveyed, you know, without, you know, a real person there and, you know, this kind of discussion. So you have to do things that are going to engage the student in the process and make them feel stuff and learn stuff and interact with the material. So they see me, you know, because I'm using Adobe Connect, and so they see me every week, okay, or most weeks. And then that lecture is recorded, that lecture is placed into Blackboard, and then there are lectures that are pre-done in Adobe Presenter that are placed in folders, and I'm going to show you that. And then there are things that the student has to do in the discussion board, and then they have to interact with each other through the discussion board. And I'm going to try to do this without, you know, kind of showing students work, and just so you kind of see how it goes. So this is my course, and I would, as I get better with this, you know, what I put in the menu, and as I do this, I take things out. Now, what's in that menu, you have to remember that what you see is not what the student sees. The students see something different. But I like to have a home page, and in the home page, I put calendars because they had to organize themselves into groups, okay? And so they organize themselves into groups, and on the calendar, they can just look at that home page, and then they can know what day their group is going to present. And I can talk to you about how we manage the presentations. The other thing is, now Blackboard calls course documents content. But I like the word course documents. You know, you have something stupid that just, like, I like it to call it course documents. So that's what I'm going to call it. So I get to change that. So I get to call it course documents. And that's because I want them to say, oh, that's the documents for the course. I need to look at that. So I put a lot of stuff in course documents. The other thing is the discussion boards, and I'll go through these things one at a time. The groups, I organize people into groups. Actually, they organize themselves into groups. And then I put those groups up, and they're able to use all the features of the group to chat with each other and to send email and to upload their files and things like that. And then external links. In this class, and I don't remember what links I have, a lot of students send me stuff because they're very passionate about the military stuff, you know, and they're learning about traumatic brain injury and post-traumatic stress disorder and all this other stuff, and they run into stuff, and so they'll send me a link. And so we begin to kind of just put those links together, and then students can go in there and they can, you know, look around and see what, and the other thing is if you want them to go places, you can put them there as well. So here's the home page. Now, I did not do this modularly, and that's a very nice way for a lot of people to do it. And you know, instead of, you know, like units, it's a module. What is your module? And then you go down. The thing that I know about distance education and having it be, or distributed learning, whatever we're calling it today, is that if you're going to be successful with it, the more students know, you know, the more you know, the better it's going to be for them. Because when things are disorganized and they're not in the right place, students get very, very frustrated very quickly. So ahead of time, and I'm going to show you another course that I organized for this semester, and so you can see the kind of organization that I did. Just because I do it this way, again, I just want to say this does not mean it's going to be right for you, okay? So I like to use course documents. So I put everything in here. Now, obviously, the first thing that we want to do is we want to make sure that the students have the syllabus, okay? And this is kind of what we would call a generic syllabus. If there were more sections of the course, this would be, you know, it would be all sections would have the same syllabus. You know, whatever English 101 is, it's likely that all sections of that will have the same syllabus, but what the professor does inside of the course may be different, and so we change things in the course calendar. And so this just gives you all of the stuff, and we're not going to go through this, but you know, it just gives everything that you need to know. And also in here is how students are going to interact, how to change email. This is like, it seems like a simple thing, but if students are not reading their university email, then they have a problem because they're not getting the stuff that you're sending them. And they say, well, what about the midterm? And you say, well, I sent it in an email. Well, I don't look at my university email. Like, okay, you know, what do you want me to do about that, you know? And so you have to really stress this. And I don't know, you know, I'm talking about what I do, so this may be people, you already know all this, so anyway. So I always put something in my syllabus that talks about technology. And then, you know, obviously spelling out the normal kind of stuff. You know, what are the course requirements and all that kind of stuff. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. A bigger thing, oh, this is not the one I want, is the course calendar. What I think needs to happen in the course calendar is that everything has to be really clear what's going to happen. And even though, actually this is from 2011. Let me show you the substance ones, because the substance abuse one is better. All right, this is 723. I want to show you a course calendar that I think works pretty well for students. I keep opening the wrong class. So that was the class from this morning. We just covered that. So here it is. Your course calendar, by the way, there's something in how we're recording, because I have a picture up here. It's a picture, a collage of different people that I put together, but whatever we're using to videotape this stripped out the picture. But if my students go on to Blackboard and they look at this, they're going to see a collage, okay, that I put together and put up there, because you can do it in banner. Like there's a way to edit the banner and you can put whatever you want in there. But I think we're probably using Adobe Connect, which has this tendency to strip some kinds of graphics out. So again, my course documents. If they can see very easily where they have to go. See, here's the picture that should have been on the banner, okay? So this is my course calendar. Now, tells them all this kind of preliminary stuff. If you're using Adobe Connect and you're using Blackboard, the more stuff that you have on your course calendar that tells them where to be, the better, okay? So on 8/23, that's a live class. And so they came to class live. I do a thing called blank notes. I publish in a folder. I take my PowerPoint presentation, I put it into text, and I blank out really critical information that as they listen to the lecture, they have to fill it in. Because I don't want them eating pizza, petting the dog, running around the room. I want them kind of engaged. And so if I give them something to do that forces them to engage a bit, and I don't put too many blanks in, or else, you know, if it's in a live class, they're going, you know, I missed that blank, can you go back? So they know every week where they're going to be. So, and this is the addictions class, it's a different class. So on 8:30, they have a live class. We're going to cover classification of drugs, but they also have 2 additional lectures, which they have to do, one on alcohol and one on FAS and fetal alcohol syndrome and fetal alcohol effects. Now, the next one is a very long lecture. There is no live class. It specifically says no live class. Even when you say that, you have students going, I'm in class, nobody's here, you know, where are they? So you can do as much as you can, and you're still going to have students who kind of struggle with the technology. I was having this conversation about like the difference between younger students and older students, and one of the things that we assume is that the younger students know more stuff. But the truth of the matter is they know what they know, and there's a whole lot of other stuff that they don't know, and so we can't make assumptions about what they know. So I highly recommend that you make your course calendar as specific as you can, and as clear as you can. Whatever information that you can include here, the better. This one has the midterm, when it will be, when it will open, when it will close, if it's a pre-recorded class, you know, so it's very, very specific. The more specific, the better. I can't stress that enough. All right, so back to this. So I have blank notes, and I'll show you what I mean by blank notes. Here's the substance use. This is substance use in the military. This is right from my PowerPoint. Again, you know, there's nothing that says you need to do this, but one of the things that I've learned is that if you push them into the content and keep them involved in the content, it's better. And this is this particular, both of these courses are heavy in content. And so it's easy to just kind of tune out, especially if you're in a distance environment where there's other things that are going on in your house, and the baby is crying, and the pizza delivery man is coming, and all that kind of stuff. So it keeps them engaged. So this is just how I do it, and this is right off of the PowerPoint. All right, so that's the blank notes folder, and I have blank notes for each and every lecture. Now, I also record because I'm using Adobe Connect. I'm able to record each and every lecture that I do. And this summer when I taught this class, I taught it from, we have a room in our house we call it the computer room, but it's really the spare bedroom, where I was able to kind of do this right from the room. I have good solid internet connection. It's a hardwired connection with a Roadrunner connection, and so it works really well. You are still dealing with students who have issues with their technology. There was a couple of times during the summer there were big thunderstorms rolling through, and people would say, I'm out in Irmo. We just had a big storm. It's heading your way. And so 5 minutes later the storm would come, and it was kind of fun. So each one is recorded. The minute they're recorded, the minute class is over, I go in, I copy the recorded URL, I go back into Blackboard. For this particular course, you can do it synchronously or asynchronously. Okay, what that means is that I'm live, and that's synchronous, but I'm also recording, and I'm putting it in Blackboard, and later on you can retrieve it. So you can retrieve it after you watched it, or if you are working and you're not there that day, you can watch that lecture because it's content heavy. Okay, this doesn't work for, like, in social work we have a lot of practice classes where we really want people in the classroom in an interactive, personal kind of way. But for courses that are content heavy, this works really well. Okay, so what they do is they will go here, and all they have to do is click, and up it comes. Okay. And this is a recording from the class. And it'll just connect. I don't know that we need to listen to me. Do you want to see what it looks like or not? Okay. I'm sorry. It takes a while for it to load. I think it's probably going through a double Adobe Connect server thing.
How long are they usually?
The classes, because in this class they get both a synchronous and an asynchronous one.
Or get two screens and watch
I'm sharing my teaching, so that's a risky, create social uncertainty.
And so what we must do is make sure that by the end of this week that we've established groups. And I can do.
See, and here's my picture here. So they see me. I can make myself as big or as little as I want.
So
Okay.
there are a number of you, and there was somebody also that got bumped out of. I have to look up her email. I don't remember her name.
Okay.
Somebody that got bumped out, and
All right. I have to figure out how to. All right. So that's that. Let me show you a. I want this. Let me show you when you record them. Now, here back into course documents, these are, I also did quizzes because one of the things that I wanted to make sure is that they were doing the reading. I know that sounds kind of, for graduate students, do we really need to do that? That's up to you. Sometimes in a graduate course, we know that they can focus on just the assignments, and that's all they focus on, and you know that they're missing a great deal of stuff. And so it depends, I guess, on how, controlling you are, and I'm very controlling. So I create these little quizzes, and they are 5 questions. and that if you watch the video or if you did the reading, these are very easy questions. Okay, so all you have to do is do the work. They're not hard. It's just a way to drive people, because if they know there's a quiz, even if the quiz is like, what did you eat for lunch? They're going to make sure they read the stuff first. So it's just a little thing that I do. I was lucky in this course because the Borden Institute published a textbook. And they published a textbook on operational and behavioral health and for military populations. And so in Blackboard, I'm able to actually put the entire textbook of all the chapters that I wanted to read. And then they can link, and boom, the chapter's there. They can print, or they can just read online, whatever works for them. And there's other readings down at the bottom. Like if I could post them, I do. There's different rules about whether you post in Blackboard where it's private, as opposed to like universal copies where you have to get copyright and clearance. And so I just do this. So I'm not advocating that you break copyright rules. It's, but anyway. So here, these are pre-recorded lectures. As I am covering certain topics, some things I do in advance. This is traumatic brain injury. This was done in advance. In this folder are the blank notes. So they open up the blank notes, they can copy them. If they're good and they have double screens, they can actually fill them out online if they want to and print them. It becomes, for substance abuse, this is hugely helpful, because substance abuse is all about content, and because that tends to be a really large elective class, the only thing I can really do is to do a midterm, a final, and a paper, and that's all I can manage in terms of grading. So this gives them, by the time they're done, they have a study guide, okay? So they have to take additional notes, but they have all the content, and they had to work a little bit. I don't give PowerPoints out. When you look at blank notes, what you realize is that they're the PowerPoints. But I just don't freely give PowerPoints out. I've worked too hard to develop them. I'm real careful about how pretty they are and stuff, and I just don't want to give them away. But I don't mind giving away the information. So this is a pre-recorded Breeze presentation on traumatic brain injury. And you don't see me moving. You get the PowerPoint, and they have to, it's an independent kind of thing. They're doing it at home. They have the blank notes. They're listening to a lecture, okay? And this would be considered asynchronous. All right, so some of them are like this. Some of them are live. Usually when I have done, I'm going to turn the sound off. Usually when I've done something like this, I will come live and I will answer questions and say, we did that video and we did the discussion board. Let's talk about some of the things that you experienced. This is a very trauma-heavy course, okay? And so you're always checking in with students. The other thing is in this course is a number of people who are former military, and you want to check in with them. Like in my addictions class, I like to check in with the people in recovery to make sure that I haven't pushed them over the edge, So it's good to be in touch with students. Get to the discussion board. So all of these things are here's the thing about recorded live classes. You have to tell students on the first day that they have to help you remember to hit the record button. Because if you don't hit that record button and you have students who are viewing asynchronously, you have no recording. Okay, so you have to be really, really good. Some people put a sticky note right on their screen so they can't start talking until they see the note that says hit record. All right, so here are the, here's the discussion, okay? So This is a very disturbing letter, which I won't open, but it's about a young man who who ends up killing another human being who is 12 years old, who has a grenade in their hands, and it's a very powerful thing. And so, because we're in social work and because we're talking about people who are going to need to deal with people who've been traumatized and who have been in this, they need to be able to experience. And so how do we put them in that situation in an online environment? And so one of the ways, I think, is through reading stuff, because reading stories and reading and listening to things can be very, very powerful. Let me get to the discussion board. I had a lot of discussion items in this class. This is all asking, this is a video on traumatic brain injury. This is a short story, because I think that sometimes reading fiction is a way of engaging people in an emotional experience. This is a presentation by a young man who had post-traumatic stress disorder, who was the guy in charge of protecting the chaplain. And so this is his story, and it's all pictures of Iraq. It's very emotional. This is from Nightline. This is something that was a documentary on Nightline about this platoon where all these people ran into terrible trouble. This Soldier Girl is a video that was done actually by one of our faculty in theater, and she allowed me to use it, and it's all about women in the military. There is an interview that I did using Adobe Connect with a soldier, and we're asking people to watch the video and then to respond to it. We're also asking them to respond to each other, and so it's set up in such a way. And then I use a discussion board to, are there thoughts? You can see what, I have course thoughts. Here's a forum for you to write your thoughts. You can see by the number of thoughts that people had, They tend not to do that in discussion. They tend to, they tend to just tell you, and stuff like that. And so there, you can see that there are, some that have a lot of responses. A lot of them, people went back and forth and had kind of complicated discussions, and so that was good. Groups, I have to see if there are. Okay. These were the groups for presentations, and so I allowed them to organize themselves into groups, and they did it based on the area and who they knew, and then there were some people left over because I put it into Blackboard so they could sign into a group, and when a group was full, it closed. Okay, and so they actually, there's always this issue of forming groups online, and there's an issue of forming groups in the classroom. They didn't do what they were supposed to do. They didn't do their work. I'm mad at them, and you have to fix it. And we're in social work. Like, if you can't figure out group work, then there's a problem. So, but it's always an issue. So, and the thing is that here's family and PTSD. They weren't quite sure. I put under development, and whatever their final title was, was their final title to the presentation. They did these presentations live, and everybody had to be live for the presentation. And what we did, because if you don't have a camera and you don't have a microphone, doesn't mean that you can't do this. So the student who has the internet has control of the classroom, uploads the PowerPoint to here, and then they call me on their cell phone, which I hit speakerphone, and the microphone picks it up perfectly. Okay, so they're able to, and they can control the forward movement of the slides. They can also then have somebody else call in, so they can have two people, as many as they want, as many cell phones as I have, I guess. I guess 3 people could call in, because I have 2 cell phones and a home phone that have speakerphone capacity. So sometimes it's not the technology, sometimes it's just, kind of being creative with things, and how are you going to do stuff. And so they were, and these groups were great. They were really great. Stuff. I mean, the other stuff you don't really need. Let me see if I had anything else that was interesting. Let me show you the addictions class. One of the things that is really important is you kind of, however you use Blackboard and whatever it is that you want to do, that things are organized in a way that students can find them. The first time that I taught the military class, I just ran everything down in a straight line. If it was the next thing you were going to do, it was going to be the top thing. And what the feedback I got is things are too hard to find. I can't find things. There's two things that happen when you put here is they don't know what synchronous means. They don't know what asynchronous means. And so you have to put something that they're going to understand the meaning of the name. And so I tried to organize this in a way where they can go right in and they can see what it is that they need to see and get the information that they want. So here we've had one class already, and here it is. If they weren't live for that class, they can come back and they can get the class later. And then there is a lot of classes in this particular course that are pre-recorded. And so each of these is a link to a lecture, and there's a lot of them. And my pink is a little hard to see up there, although it's not too bad there. And then when I can, if there are readings, now these are things that, this was an interesting site. I just threw it up here. Students can, it's not anywhere, but they can read it if they want. The MAST is a screening test, and it's referred to in one of their lectures. And then there are these additional readings, and National Institute on Drug Abuse has all these like single page, this is everything you want to know about marijuana and more in a single page thing. So I put them there. They can get stuff pretty quickly. Also, there's journal articles and different stuff. So this all kind of goes into here. And they also have a reading packet. So there are other additional articles that they have to pick up from universal copies. And I get questions like, is the reading packet required? Like, yes, it's under required readings, and you have to, sometimes there's a frustration. Sometimes I feel the frustration, and I have to calm myself down, and I have to be as direct with them and not sound like, what are you, nuts? Like, what's wrong with you, and I have to try not to get into that space. Because sometimes it's like legitimate stuff and students don't understand it, and you realize that you're using a language that they're not familiar with, that they don't know, okay? And so you have to calm yourself down and try to be, I had a student who couldn't access the lectures, the pre-recorded lectures or the recorded lectures, and it was the weekend, and she says, I really want to catch up, and I don't know what to do. I spent like probably 25 minutes with her on the phone, checking everything. And then my husband was downstairs, who is a wonderful technologist. This is happening. What should I tell her? Like, oh, try this. Oh, try this. That didn't work. What should she do now? Trying to help this student. Turns out she just had to buy a new laptop, and all of her problems were solved. But the technology is challenging for students. And so, trying to be patient and work through with that is really a good thing. the degree of organization, bring as many things in. There's so many different things that you can do. And I'm assuming that some of you are just interested in what Blackboard does. Some of you may be interested in what Adobe Connect does or Adobe Presenter. But when you marry these two things together, you get a really kind of powerful way of doing distributed learning. I think that solves some of the kind of problems when we think about distributed learning, about what's available, in a face-to-face environment and what is not. So this is just what I do, and people have to make it work for them, and that's all I have to say. People have any comments or questions, or yeah?
Can you show us how you started using, how you use Adobe Connect first step and second step?
Yes. And now, remember that Adobe Connect is the live one, okay? And if you're going to do it from home, okay, to use Adobe Connect from home, you need an Adobe Connect account. Okay, so with your universe, with your unit, if you have an IT person in your unit, if you can go in and get it through the university. Mitchell West and Chris Brown and Michelle Dames, their group over there can take care of that. But your unit, I think there's a fee for not for Connect. Right. So you get an account, okay? And let me see if I can. I think I can do that. I can show you how I would do it. So we use a server here at the university, and it's called Breeze. That's just the name of the server. And so it comes up to this, and mine is actually my really old GWM. This is not my email address. It's just one that we never changed.
When you set up your account, Mitchell West can help you, and he'll give you a login and password.
All right. So I always get my
I have to log in twice a lot.
Let's see if that works. Okay. So I come here. Now, if I'm going to do a live class, then I'm going to set up a new meeting. So it says create a new meeting. I say presentation, and I call this XXX Pres, and I can set the time. If you set the time on this, it really doesn't matter what you put there. What this affects is the recording. So if you don't change this, it will make you give your recording, it'll make you not be able to use the same URL. So just always change that. So we're going to start this now, and then I'm going to let anybody with the URL, this is what I do, because it'll come up and it'll say, do you want to register as a guest? They register as a guest, and they have to type their name in, and then in the box, then I know who's in the class because it shows up in the attendee list. And then I hit finish, and it comes up, and it's just there. Let me see how this will take us. All right, so here it is. The meeting is created. It's going to come up. It'll probably implode because it's probably doing things in two ways. I can share my screen. The sharing screen, because you can upload PowerPoint into here, but I don't think you can upload Word documents. You have to share your screen on the Word documents. So I can share my screen. Michael B. is now in my class, and so he's a participant. I can make Michael B. a presenter. And, you know, Michael B. can now run the class. Okay, so he can now share his screen. He can do all that kind of stuff remotely, and so that works well with students who are doing presentations and stuff like that. The record is up here, and here. First of all, I'm going to start my webcam. I don't know whether there's a webcam here. Okay, so there's no camera here, but at home my laptop has a camera, and I have another camera that has a microphone in it. So up here under meeting, it's just record meeting, and it'll tell me, there'll be a little red dot, and and yet I have to say to students, if you don't see that red dot, please tell me, because you forget, because a lot of times I tell students ahead of time that, like, if they want to chit chat, come early, okay, because they can enter this classroom at any time. They can come early. I have 75 students in my addictions class, and what happens is in the chat box, and I know that this is not a Breeze presentation, but in the chat box they all start chatting. Hi, how are you? Oh, hey Mary, what's up? Are you in my, and that's fine. It's the social piece of being in a classroom. But I sent them out a list of rules, and that is at 6 o'clock when class starts, the only comments in the chat box have to be relevant to the content, okay? Because if not, this chat box, 75 people, this chat box is flying by. And then somebody says something and they forget that, like, everybody can read your comments. So I send them out a list of etiquette. Don't say anything that you wouldn't say to somebody's face. Don't say anything that I wouldn't say. Keep the chatting to the content. If it's questions that are not relevant to the content, I will stay after class, even in this environment, and I will answer. I'd be happy to answer questions about the syllabus or the assignments or the test or whatever. So keeping people on track can be a challenge. It's a challenge in the classroom. You're giving your lecture, and a student raises their hand and says, "Is this going to be on the test?" and totally throws off your flow. Like, it's like, really? You really are going to ask me that question now? You get the same thing in this kind of environment. So, anything else? I'm going to stop the recording, and I'm going to end this particular meeting, and I will show you what happens. This is going to take me back to should take me back to Adobe Connect. And if you look here, I go to recordings, and I want to make this public because I want everybody to be able to get this on their own. I don't want to have to give them a password. And I click on that, and that's the URL. So if you wanted to then put that's what I put in my my live recorded synchronous folder, okay? It goes in there with what the title is, okay, which would be, today's presentation, okay? So it's really pretty easy software, I must say. And these things worked really well. Let me see if I put any links in here. Yeah, somebody sent this to me, the impact of deployment on spouses. Okay, so it's a link that somebody sent me that was interesting, and so I put it in there. I'll answer questions about anything, so not just how I organized it, or if you have questions about how you might organize it, anything. Yeah.
Do you require every student to sit in front of the computer?
No. No. In some of our classes in social work, they are required to do that. They're required to be live, okay? Particularly the policy classes. The sequence chair says every student has to be present or you're marked absent. That is a different kind of course. The addictions course, in particular, is a content-driven course. So if you are sitting there live, or if you're doing it over the weekends, I don't care, okay? I do track statistics, because if you got a really bad grade on the midterm, I can go back and see, well, did you even watch the class? Were you present in class, okay? So that might give me some information. I know who watched the class. I know who was live, and I know who was, who viewed it later. And also some of the live people go back and view. So I allow them in that class to view it asynchronously. But you don't have to do that. That's a choice that the professor makes.
Can you also see how long they watched that meeting? Can you keep track of that?
For the students, how long the student?
You just click and then they walk away. And then
Well, no, because you have no magic camera into their house, so you can click it to play, and they can go do their laundry. You don't know, and there's no way to track that. That's why sometimes, if I think it's important, I put these little reading quizzes in, or in what I did in one of the quizzes was to put something in that said, I talk about some dessert. What dessert did I mention in the middle of the presentation? They have to find that. So even if they're skimming, which I don't think they do, it depends. If you're teaching undergrads, maybe yes. Graduate students, in theory, have a little bit more. They really want the knowledge, and so they'll stay. They'll stay through. So it depends.
One more, yeah. So go ahead.
Well, I have, last question. Midterm and the final, so it's an open book, open note, or?
Yes, for me it is. You can arrange for them to do it. If you have a big class, it gets hard. But if you have a computer lab, you can maybe get, if you have a teaching assistant or something like that, somebody has to sign up that they're going to take the test. They go into the computer lab, they take the test. What I do as a way around that, again, because it's of the type of content that is I time the test. And what I say to them is, this is open book, except if you don't study, you're going to run out of time. And that's kind of how I handle that. But if they really know their stuff and they get through all of that and they say, I'm just not sure about that, and they want to look that up, that's okay with me. Because it just makes it a lot easier for me to manage that many students. But again, that's a very personal preference. But you can, if you have the personnel, or you're going to have to go over to the computer lab yourself and proctor the exam. But the exam can be up on Blackboard. So.
All right, we are out of time, so I'm just going to stop here, and I think Dr. Brown's going to make herself available for a little bit if you have more questions, but I want to make sure if somebody has to leave. Just a reminder, there's an evaluation, so you could just fill that out, and just please take our calendar, because we have a lot of sessions this semester that are dealing with, not similar, but topics related to online learning and teaching. So if you're still interested, please consider some of those. And also, if you have questions, please contact me. We're on the website, or our wonderful instructional designers are always happy to help with questions. And again, I want to thank you. I think
You're
it's a
welcome.
lot of good information, real practical stuff, and she's definitely an expert with this. So I want to thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank
It was
you.
my pleasure. Thank you. Good audience.